Afternoon. Welcome, Rotarians, guests, and Zoomies or Zoomers, I'm not sure which, to the Rotary Club of York. We are the 26th largest Rotary Club in the known universe. We are proud to have some of York County's finest servants and business leaders among our members. I am your club president-elect, Aaron Jacobs, filling in for President Glenn Miller. We are a club of not just service, but service above self to the point where service becomes self. We would ask that you take a moment to make certain that your devices are on silent for our program today. Our opening song, My Country 'Tis of Thee, will be led by the often imitated but never duplicated Calvin Weary. His words, not mine. Followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Our invocation will be led by Steve Feldman, and visitors will be introduced by Fran Polk. Calvin.
Rotarians, please join me. My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please pray with me. Lord, we're grateful. We don't always remember to be grateful, but when we do remember, we realize that we have a great deal to be grateful for. Today, we're particularly grateful for those who care for our waterways. We ask that you fill them with wisdom and discernment so that both the beauty and the safety of our water features will be able to serve us for generations to come. We're also grateful for the principles of this Rotary Club, and ask that you fill us with both the ability to perceive their deeper meaning and the courage to live by them. Remind us to thank those who have provided this meal to us, and help us remember that that food had to come from somewhere besides just the kitchen at the country club. Above all, we're grateful for the fellowship and the love that can be shared in this room and beyond these walls. Amen.
I'm grateful. I get to introduce an awful lot of guests today, and I hope I pronounce all the names properly. I am pleased to have the honor of introducing you. When I call your name, please stand. The hard part is please remain standing until President-elect Aaron, change the script, welcomes you. And to start, we have one visiting Rotarian, Casey Nixon from North York. We have a collection from who are guests of James Parker. We have Andrew Ernst, Kelly Fetty, Jennifer Harding, Greta Miller, Noel Ortiz, Susan Schofield, and that's James's group. Stay standing. Kevin Schreiber, who is not here today, but he gets the gold star. Megan Anderson, Todd Davies, Jonathan Damaris, David Gonzalez, Kim Hogeman, Katie Mahoney, Joe Malda, Delia Pabon. Somebody stood up, so I guess it was close. The Sully Pinos, Lauren Rossi, Brendan Salyards, Marlena Schutt, Joanna Wilmore, turning the page. Oh, Frank Countess brought two guests today, Sydney Kessler-Appel. They usually sit back there. Laura Wand. And Marissa Fish is the guest of Jen May. Sarah Van Fleet is the guest of Rebecca Shanneman. Nick Krupa is the guest of Dick Brown.
Thank you, Fran. Welcome, guests. We hope you enjoy the fellowship, the program, and the food, and you please visit us often. And if I can make this more enticing, I've heard there was a rumbling in the back corner of the room that we want to have Taco Tuesdays once a month. Thank you, Matt Falvey. It was his exclusive idea. Rotarians, please help me welcome our guests. Thank you. Thank you. I don't care what Glenn says. This is way too much fun. Speaking of President Glenn continues to recover with great haste at his home and down in Cape May, assuming that some sunshine will do him good. He assures me that he is no longer experiencing significant pain. He eats and sleeps well and is eager to return to the podium. I expect that Glenn is joining us through Zoom at the moment. So I thought it would be well if we did right by our president by wishing him get well soon. So if you would join me on the count of three, I'd like to say, get well soon, Glenn. So count of three, 1, 2, 3, get well soon, Glenn. Thank you. I do expect Glenn to return next week to wrench me from the mic, whether it be to your delight, chagrin, or indifference. On to announcements. On September 7th, there will be a new member orientation at 11 a.m. in the Mixed Grill here at the Country Club of York. The membership committee will meet on September 7th at 1:30 on Zoom. We do have some seats, but they're going fast for our September 14th offsite meeting at the South County Brewing Company. You must register to attend by contacting either Becky Rook or the Rotary office. There's also a QR code on every table you'll see on a little slip of paper. If you scan that with your phone, it will automatically sign you up for it. It's very nice. It's very convenient. It's user-friendly. There will be an optional tour and tasting available for an additional cost. On to our old friend Con, the York County Sheriff's Office annual spaghetti dinner fundraiser to benefit the Canine unit will be held at the York Fairgrounds on Sunday, September 18th from 12 to 4. Con and all the canines will be there. And as a reminder, several years ago, our club raised funds to add Con to the Canine unit. Ticket prices for adults are $10 and $5 for children. If you'd like to purchase tickets, please contact Sergeant Warbaugh. The membership committee would like to extend a happy anniversary to 3 outstanding Rotarians, past President Mike King, Jeff Lobach, and past President Dan Waltersdorf on their 30th anniversary as members of our club. Clearly, 1992 was a very good year for the Rotary Club of York. We thank you for being a valued member of our Rotary Club, and if we could all give them a round of applause. Next, we will hear from someone I wish we could duplicate. My words, not hers, our Executive Director, Lynn Morrison. Lynn. Keep you under control.
Thank you, Aaron. Under control. So I wanted to speak with you today about something that I think might be helpful. I had a longtime member come to me and said, you know, Lynn, I've never proposed a new member, and I'm kind of embarrassed to say I don't know exactly how to do it. So I thought I'd go over a little bit, just those steps to remind everybody, because we streamlined it quite a bit. And maybe if you're a little rusty, you haven't done it for a while. So a couple things to know. The first thing is you've probably already identified someone who's going to make a great Rotarian. They're a community leader. You think they're going to be an asset to your club. Then what do? You can go to our website. And you can find on the website in the upper right-hand corner, it says resources. If you click on that, it'll take you to a member, propose a new member forms. That is where you can find the 2 forms you need to propose a new member. One is a proposer form and one is the membership application form. Those are both forms that you can email to your potential candidate and they can fill out, save it, and send it back to you. It's easy. There's 3 steps you need to do in order to propose a new member. The first, you fill out a proposer form for that new candidate. Second, you send that membership application to the potential new member. They complete that and they send it back to you. Step 3, You take both of those 2 forms and you email them to me and to Chris Topp, who is the chair of the membership committee. So it's 1, 2, 3, easy peasy. And once we've received those, they will be forwarded to the membership committee for consideration at their monthly meeting. So it's easy to find, it's easy to do. We need new members, we need you. If you have any questions, always call me if you have any problems with any of the forms, but it's easy, and you know we're always welcome and looking for new people, so thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And word has it from our audio visual over here that Glenn gives us a lot of heart emojis back for our well wishes. So you're welcome, Glenn. Being that it's Mike King's 30th anniversary, I can't think of a better way to celebrate this moment than to invite him back to the podium to give us an update on our Love for Community event that is quickly approaching.
Thank you, Aaron. Very limited approach here. We are just days away, 12 days away to be exact, from what used to be the Rotary Golf and Tennis event, and in true Rotary fashion has morphed over the years into the Rotary Golf, Tennis, Croquet, Cornhole, and Pickleball Extravaganza. This historically has been one of our most successful endeavors over the years, and has supported many worthwhile community projects. It also has been, certainly in my view, and I think many members, one of the most enjoyable social events that we do over the years. I'm pleased to report that participation for golf and tennis has been strong and almost fully subscribed. So if you have interest in playing golf or tennis, I would suggest that you express that promptly, because that we're running out of spots on that. There is also interest in other of these activities, and in particular, I would say there are openings available for croquet. There's about a dozen croquet players already signed up, but I could use more. And there's also availability for pickleball, which is our latest addition to the array of activities. If none of that appeals to you, then please join us for dinner that evening. Bring a guest, and you will have the opportunity to purchase any of a wide variety of items, including tickets to local events, so week-long vacations in a couple of vacation homes were generously donated by members. To give you just a sample, a little bit of a preview of some of the auction things available, we have several slides. So I've asked Lindsay to handle. Lindsay asked me if I wanted the clicker, and I said, there is no way I want the clicker. In my experience, when the speaker has the clicker and clicks and nothing happens, the speaker looks like an idiot. If the techie clicks and nothing happens, then everybody says, well, there must be a technical glitch here. And so she graciously agreed that she would handle that. So the first thing, this is again, just one of many, many items. There's a Marco Island Getaway, and you can read the details on that, donated by Karen McCormick. And there's sort of an added bonus on this, and that is Bailey Company has agreed to provide, as part of that package, round trip airport transportation to and from BWI Airport. Next is a self-described there, beautifully framed original oil painting on canvas by our own Fran Polk, who's here, and it's beautiful, beautiful painting. And that will be another auction item that you will have an opportunity to purchase. I did not know what long drop earrings were until this event, but here they are. And these are donated by Debbie Ashway and Pewter Brothers Jewelers, and they are absolutely spectacular. And they will be those items. Last, but certainly not least, I mean, this is my favorite. Who would not want this guy to come to their yard and do yard work? I mean, it's just spectacular. So it's sort of, that picture speaks for itself. So anyway, these are just a few of, there's about 24 items on the either the silent auction or the live auction. And so there are many things, obviously, that I don't have time to talk about. Here's the bottom line. This is one of our most important fundraising events every Rotary year. And my ask is that each and every one of you participate in some way in supporting the event. And this event, as you will recall, is in support, the money raised from this event will go to support the project for construction of a new recreational and educational facility for the youth of York City. So it's a good cause. It's lots of fun. Please show up, please participate. Thank you.
Thank you, past President Mike. So as you can see, here are your options. Either spend your money and go to the Marco Islands in Florida, or I come to your house. That's it. Anyway, I hope we all participate in that. And now to introduce today's program is Jeff Vermeulen.
Thank you, President-elect Aaron. It is my honor to introduce our speaker, Dr. Silas Chamberlin, who serves our community as Vice President for Economic Development at the York County Economic Alliance. Silas previously served as the CEO for Downtown Inc. He was Executive Director for the Schuylkill River National Heritage Area and in regional leadership roles with DCNR and the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor. I proudly chair the board at the York County Economic Alliance and can say with complete certainty that Silas is passionate about economic development, supporting and growing businesses, and creating resilient communities in York County and throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He ushered in the affiliation of DI with YCEA to strengthen both organizations. He has worked tirelessly with Senator Kristen Phillips Hill to launch the York County Trail Towns program that is now featured in 7 municipalities throughout the county. He navigated the leadership of Yoko Strong Restart Task Force during the COVID-19 pandemic, launched the Yoko Fiber Task Force, and is here today to discuss his leadership of the Codorus Greenway Project. The Codorus Greenway is a transformative redevelopment project from existing from city line to city line, and it is nearing the commencement of its first phase of construction. This project will create a safer and more equitable transportation system in the city of York. It'll improve community connections to economic resources while boosting economic opportunities for our residents and businesses. It'll cultivate climate change resiliency along the Codorus Creek as well. This brings to life the 100-year vision for the Greenway along the creek's banks that was originally put to paper by the famed landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted in the beginning of the 20th century. At York College, the beginning of the Greenway touches our currently in development Knowledge Park project. As the Greenway will transform the physical landscape of downtown York, the Knowledge Park seeks to transform educational pathways, whether providing a high-knowledge business with a place to call home or helping a student discover a passion for their future career. The Knowledge Park will create these opportunities for both our students and our community. But we are just but a small part of this project. Silas is here to fill in the blanks on all the rest of the good stuff. And with that, I'd like to welcome our speaker, Dr. Silas Chamberlin.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. You can tell Jeff is a great York College representative because in an introduction of me, he found a way to weave in the Knowledge Park and get his message across too. So it's inspirational. Like any good Rotary speaker, I've taken the liberty of packing the first third of this room with our team and our supporters and our board. So thank you all for being here. I know Jeff framed it as I was coming to talk about my leadership of this project, but just like any other project we undertake at the Economic Alliance, we have a very deep bench of folks that play a variety of roles on every one of our projects, from the fundraising side to the project management, to the engineers and consultants that we work with along the way. So this is certainly a team effort. And hopefully this is something that's a little bit familiar to you. We've been talking about this now for several years. As Jeff pointed out, really, we've been talking about it for a century. The Codorus Greenway eventually will wind the whole way from York College on the upstream side of its project through the city of York, through many of our neighborhoods, but also the downtown, onto People's Bank Park. So it's this long corridor that stretches 1.4 miles through the entire city. And as you can imagine, transforming this space is expensive. It's about a $75 million project, and we are well on the way to funding it. So the main goal here is to reestablish connections between the creek and the neighborhoods through which they pass. The city that for several generations now has been in many ways cut off from the creek by a federal levee system. So if you were to walk out to the creek today, I think a lot of you know there's some attractive parts of the creek. There's many others where the creek has banks that are way up above, very steep to get down, chain link fences running along them. The creek feels like private space that isn't available to the city of York. And in many communities where they're transforming waterfronts into community assets, they're reversing those kinds of trends. And that's really what we're trying to do. And along the way, we're creating this corridor as a platform for economic development, but also for water quality improvements, safety improvements, and a lot of other benefits along the way that I'll touch on. The one that I'm not going to touch on a lot, but I want to mention up front is water quality. So this is a Greenway project that will create riparian buffers through this whole corridor. And many of you work with companies or with municipalities who are really worried about Chesapeake Bay sediment reduction and pollution reduction. This project alone, if fully implemented, would reduce by 16% York County's goals of trying to reduce sediment and nutrient loads in the Codorus Creek. So with one project, we can take a huge chunk out of what is ending up in the Chesapeake from upstream pollution and from sediment reduction. So there's my water quality spiel, and then I promise to be an economic developer for the rest of this. So 100 years ago, 1907, Frederick Law Olmsted comes to York. He's invited here by our civic leadership, our business leaders, and they say, how can you help us think through improving infrastructure in our city? And that includes at the time paving streets. Some things never change. Dealing with stormwater runoff and sewage runoff. And at that time, sewage went directly from the plumbing right into the creek. And they also asked him to look at the park system, which included some existing parks, but also the Codorus Creek and the potential to transform the creek into a park. And you can see this quote from A.B. Farquhar, or maybe you can't if you're in the back, where he's talking about Olmsted's vision and saying that the Codorus could be one of our attractive possessions instead of an ugly sewer and sometimes a peril, and that it could be transformed into a real asset for the city of York. And frankly, that's the vision we've been working off of for 100 years, and we are now closer than ever before. And as an aside, when the community received this plan from Olmsted, it had funding recommendations within it. It said that the city of York should issue bonds and then use those bonds to pay for this work to happen. They proposed a $25,000 bond to pay for the transformation of the Codorus Creek. And the voters of the city turned it down. It was too expensive. So here we are back with a $75 million proposal for work that could have happened in 1907 for $25,000. And as a result of really not fulfilling that vision early on in the 20th century, we continued to have severe flooding throughout the city of York that affected our downtown, but then especially Agnes in 1972 that inundated many of our residential neighborhoods. And in the process, destroyed homes that then opened the door to urban renewal, where wide-scale demolition of homes and entire neighborhoods, in particular historically Black neighborhoods, were demolished and cleared for new industrial developments, such as the Densby location in the city of York, or new housing to attract new residents into the city. So the 1972 flood was devastating structurally, but also culturally for the way that York residents looked at the creek. It also was enough to get the attention of the Army Corps of Engineers, who came in after Agnes and built the levee system as we know it today. And to the Army Corps' credit, it did cut down on severe flooding in the city of York. It did its job. But in the process, only the goal of flood reduction was baked into this project. Recreation, public access, economic development haven't been parts of the Codorus for now 50 years, and we're trying to change that. We've also, over the years, and I want to give credit to people who have been working on this for a long time, have done a lot of studies on how we can leverage the Codorus. Back probably 10 or 15 years ago, we published River of Opportunity, which looked at this whole corridor through the city and said, what are the opportunities for economic development? And some that came to the surface then were Northwest Triangle and, cleaning up that site and preparing it for development. Looking at how we could attract retail along the creek and along the emerging Heritage Rail Trail. And then Recapture the Riverfront was a little more recent, but it focused on the recreational potential and the cultural potential of having a green and accessible Codorus. And those most recently became part of the City of York's Green Action Plan in 2017, which looked really at the downtown and where the Codorus passes through and envisioned a Northwest Triangle, a Lafayette Plaza, a new space for the steam plant and the York County History Center that would all be tied together by a green corridor. And so it was trying to take at least some pieces of that original Olmsted plan and bake them into our actual city planning documents. We also had some very tangible successes. Back in 2016, the coalition that was helping to advance moving plans into action helped raise the money to complete the Heritage Rail Trail through most of the city and had a great ribbon cutting. And that was WellSpan and York College and the city, the county, Downtown Inc., all working together. And if you've been out there recently through the Northwest Triangle, you know that last segment of the trail is now under construction and it's actually completed. But like any great infrastructure project, there's one missing piece till they can cut the ribbon, and that's the railroad. So anybody that's tried to build anything knows the railroad sort of trumps everybody else. There's about 10 feet that they have to come back in and fill in with some paving until we can say Golden Spike is done and the Heritage Rail Trail is complete from John Rudy Park to Maryland. But these were important moments along the way where, again, we were doing pieces of Homestead's vision. And of course, doing a lot of economic development in that corridor along the way, from the stadium to the Commerce Center, to Logos Academy, to Yarks, to market rate residential. And yet with all that progress, all that planning, all that development, this is still what the Codorus looks like today. It's still inaccessible. It's not beautiful most days. It is sometimes. And in the eyes of the beholder, I guess it's always beautiful, but there's legacy infrastructure, there's crumbling flood walls, it's steep, it doesn't feel like a welcoming place or an asset. And it's also unsafe. This is the Basque Gate Dam just downstream from Philadelphia Street, inundated with water. That creates a low head dam effect that can pull people in and has pulled people in the past, even within the last couple of weeks here. There was a flooding death, not directly related to the dam, but to the water that gets backed up behind the dam. And then of course, even during good times, Basque Gate Dam is this sieve that's stuck up, broken, inoperable, and it just catches debris. And so if you work in the Susquehanna Commerce Center, here's your view when you're looking out on the creek, and it's not exactly what Olmsted had in mind. So several years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we decided that we really wanted to try to seriously take this project to the next level. A big part of that was driven by knowing we were going to have a governor from York for 4 years at least, and then ultimately 8 years. And that would be the only way you could get a significant project like this done. Because unlike many forms of economic development, it's really tough to go out and raise money that says, we want to rebuild flood walls, we want to build trails, we want to plant riparian buffers. Those are not traditional things that you go out and secure large amounts of funding for. But we thought it was important enough because even in the time since some of those recent plans were completed, this corridor had become even stronger in terms of how much educational institutions, market rate housing, affordable housing, Jeff's project at York College, the Knowledge Park, anchoring one end, the stadium anchoring the other, the UFD building, which just became home to Campus Door, which I know you heard about a few weeks ago. There's just so much good going on here that to neglect this corridor just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so back in May of 2018, we brought together our stakeholders, the city, the county, conservation district, people who had been working on the creek and improving it for decades, and asked, how could we make this the asset that we all want it to be by adding trails, adding access points, improving water quality, reducing flooding. We spent several months meeting with that team. And then in December of 2018 came up with our plan, which was the Greenway Project I'll be showing you in a moment. And we wanted to start at York College, which is as far upstream in this project as you can go, and then slowly work our way downstream over time as we raised money and designed those pieces. 2 months later, we had to drastically rethink that because fortunately, the Army Corps of Engineers reached out and said, we're spending $16 million of our own money to improve this levee system. We're going to start rebuilding walls. We're going to start maintaining sections that haven't been maintained in a couple decades. And we looked at it as an opportunity to match the federal investment that they were putting into the project with the state funding that we were likely to pursue. So we tapped the brakes on our original vision and we said, okay, where is the greatest need within the corridor? The Army Corps was concerned about some of the retaining walls, flood walls between Philadelphia and Market Street. And so this section, ironically, right in the middle of the project, became the phase one that we started fully designing, working towards permitting. So just to give you a sense of what that phase one would look like and will look like, this is standing downstream from Philadelphia Street with the Commerce Center on your right, future home of the History Center on your left. You can see this doesn't resemble what it looks like today. The Basque Gate Dam is gone, it's demolished, and there's a more natural ripple in its place. There's new access points down to the creek on both sides. There's a connecting trail running under Philadelphia Street and connecting downstream and upstream. And when you look at it from an overhead, you can see that those trail connections both cantilever back up to get you back up to the top of the banks and connect to the Commerce Center parking lot, the History Center, the rail trail, but also help you travel up and down this corridor on one connected trail. And here's just a close-up shot from Market Street, looking at the riparian buffer that's created within the levee system, because the idea here is that you're taking a broad but shallow creek and bringing it into a narrower and faster moving stream. And that gives you real estate within the levee system to plant these native plants that become your riparian buffers. It also creates opportunities for them. People get down to the water's edge. And when it floods, the flood waters go up over those areas, the water gets absorbed, and that's your sediment and nutrient reduction. Also worth pointing out, mid-block, it's a little tough to see, but right in here is the Korean War Memorial. And today the Korean War Memorial is right here. So we've had conversations for almost 2 years with a group of Korean War vets about restoring that monument and moving it mid-block and creating more of a platform for it. So that would be part of this phase as well. So that was the vision, and we submitted our application package for permitting to the Army Corps of Engineers back in May of 2021. And they spent several months reviewing it, lots of positive meetings about how they were on board with all this, and I think they truly are. Their main concern is just maintaining flood capacity. As long as you can do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't make flooding worse and it can still hold as much water as it does now. And then we got towards the end of our permitting process and there was a red flag that went up. And that red flag was the Market Street Bridge, which, as you all know, major east-west artery right in the heart of our downtown and right in that phase one that we had proposed to do. And the Army Corps said to us, we think this project is great. We think your hydrological model works. The only concern we have is the Market Street Bridge. That needs to be repaired or replaced and redesigned. And of course, that was news to us. That's a $7 to $8 million project. The city of York knew that eventually they would have to replace that bridge, but it was more like a 10-year timeline, not a 2 to 3 year timeline, not a 1 year timeline. And so instead of saying, okay, we're going to stop this project, we're going to go raise $7 to $8 million, we're going to permit a bridge replacement, which you can imagine is not easy. We'd said to the Army Corps, okay, are we able in your modeling and your permitting of this project to start upstream where we originally envisioned starting at York College and work our way down and keep our work, at least for now, upstream of the Market Street Bridge? And they were excited about that possibility. And now that is what we are working to get permitted. So I just want to show you that a lot of thinking went into that initial first phase. And now we are pivoting to a revised first phase. So what you're seeing in red here is roughly Grantley with Penn Street in the middle to College. So a really big chunk of this corridor. And we're excited about this phase one because when you're standing at Grantley looking down at the first phase of the project, on the right, you have the Knowledge Park at York College. This is, the in progress photo. You have Densply, which is being vacated and currently being sold, and a significant redevelopment opportunity for the city or another future owner. And you have the homes at Thaxton Park. And in transforming this, we would be able to add a trail onto the west side of the creek that connects upstream to Bance Park, which if you know that part of the city, you know Bance Park's a very popular neighborhood park, and then continues down past Densply, past the Penn Street Bridge, and continues downstream and complements, and there's the after picture of Knowledge Park, which doesn't quite look like that today, but it will soon, to complement it. If you look at it from the other angle, this is hovering above College Avenue and looking upstream. And I'll just note before I show you the rendering on the right there, you can see the current bank. On the right is one of our communities in York that has the highest rates of poverty. I'll show you some stats in a moment, but is totally cut off from the Codorus Creek. At the top of the bank is a chain link fence. And even if that weren't there, it's a straight drop pretty much down in. Lots of utilities like sewage utilities, water utilities in there as well. And we would lay back that bank and create an access point right from the community to the water's edge, and then also continue that trail down the west bank of the creek here through the community underneath the College Street Bridge, which is being replaced by the county already, and then down past the food bank. And then that trail connection, not the full Greenway, but the trail, will continue down past Logos Academy and then down into Foundry Plaza. So here's a rendering looking from King Street with Logos on your right, the food bank just up on the other block. And again, you see that trail coming down and connecting, connections to Logos to give access to the creek, riparian buffers, and then also this switchback that brings people up to King Street, because right on the other side of King Street is the brand new Rabbit Transit Station that's just been totally rehabbed and is a major destination for folks living in these neighborhoods. So it's not surprising that we're trying to do a little PR about this project, because we spent about 2 years talking about why that phase one was so cool and why working at Lafayette Plaza was such a great idea. And now that we've run into this speed bump with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Market Street Bridge, we're pivoting. But we do truly think that there is a lot of logic to this revised phase one, and actually might be stronger than the phase one that we were forced into because of those emergency repairs. This helps get us back to our original vision of starting upstream and then working our way down. It's a creek, so that makes sense. It complements the work that the Army Corps has already started to do. So if you've gone past the Schmidt-Alt building or Penn Street, you've seen the long Army Corps of Engineers wall that they've reconstructed. I forget how many millions of dollars that was, but we'll be matching that federal investment with project work in this area. This allows us to connect to Bance Park, which is really popular. It allows us to do a lot more of the project because the downtown portion is the most expensive. As I showed you, we'll do about half of the West Bank Trail, which after it gets from Grantley to Foundry Plaza, will eventually in future phases connect down to the Armory and Kids Space. And then the one that I think we're most excited about is just the benefit that this has to neighborhoods in the community. Our downtown segment was always going to be important to the whole city and to our downtown. But in green, you're seeing our proposed phase one, and it touches census tracts that aren't just the highest rates of poverty in the city of York, they're the highest rates of poverty in York County. So these are the most underserved communities in our county. The stats certainly back that up in terms of rates of home ownership versus renters, in terms of poverty, median income. But the one that I think is most compelling is that 27% of the households in our project area don't have a car. So they're totally reliant on walking around the community, biking around the community, or public transit. And what this project does is create safe routes, safe off-street routes for school, for work, to get to the transit station, to fulfill your necessities. And this becomes the spine of a transportation network as much as it is about recreation and environmental benefit. And then just for the sake of time, I'm not going to talk about all these, but there are some things that we can do as part of our phase one that help this overall project and really clear the way for future phases. But the biggest one is removing the Baskill Gate Dam, demolishing it, restoring the natural flow in that area, and then making some improvements at Foundry Plaza, which right now is one of the few spots in our whole city where you can actually go down and touch the water's edge. You're cut off almost everywhere else. So when we remove Basque Gate Dam, the water will drop at Foundry Plaza, and we need to make sure there's steps that reach the water, there's ADA access to the water. We've received a grant to help with a fishing platform in that area too that's ADA compliant. So we'll make some improvements there, and then a bunch of things about water quality and stuff and oil separators that I don't think you want to hear about. So everything I just showed you, the Greenway work between Grantley and College, the West Bank Trail the whole way from Grantley to Foundry Plaza, and some of those early out projects that we think set up the rest of the work on this, including the Basque Gate Dam removal, it's cost about $25 million. So roughly a third of our overall project. But we have now raised $26 million. And so this is fully funded. We are not on a funding pursuit to help close a gap for this phase of work. We can do this. Now the critical path item that we have is having this permit application in front of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and getting them to sign off on our vision for it. Obviously, for future phases, we'll be right back to fundraising, applying for grants. But so far, the contributors that we've been able to bring to this project is almost every state and federal agency that has a program related to transportation, equity, economic development, water, has contributed at a high level to this project. And we continue to work with a couple others, including the city of York, talking with the mayor and city council about them considering some of their federal funding going to this project as well, so that we can continue with a phase 2 or stretch this phase even further. And then there's some state authorities that also have the ability to finance or provide grants for projects too. So we're not taking our foot off the pedal when it comes to raising funds, but we are at a very good place for this phase 1. So what would you see happen first? We had hoped that the Basque Gate Dam could be demolished this year. That's a little bit contingent on seeing where we are with city funding and contributions to the project, but we will be doing some things like installing water quality gauges and water level gauges, which doesn't sound real important, except that that's going to become our baseline for this project. So we're going to install those now. And then every time we build a phase of the project, we'll be able to say definitively, here's what the implications were for water level. Here's what the implications were for water quality. And then allows us to go back and raise more funds from programs that invest in those things. But the critical path item in 2022, or if it has to be early 2023, is our Army Corps of Engineers permit package to move forward with that phase that I just showed you. And then that allows us to go to bid and construction in 2023. And then in tandem with all that, continue to work on designs for phase 2, which is just continuing right back down the creek, doing the next several segments, and of course, raising funding for it. And just to give you a sense of the kind of funding we're going after, back in April, we applied for a $15 million raise grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation that funds projects just like this one, but they typically fund them in Pittsburgh and Philly and New York City and large areas. And we unfortunately were turned down for it, but this is a program that's benefiting from the infrastructure bill and will continue to be replenished. So even within the next 6 months, we plan to apply once again and try to secure that $15 million so we can keep going on a phase 2. And if we don't, we have a bunch of other creative solutions that we'll pursue. But we are not slowing down on the fundraising piece of it. So just to summarize, if you were here 2 years ago, I was probably showing you pretty renderings of Lafayette Plaza. And now I'm showing you pretty renderings of York College, but there is a good reason for that. Part of it is the phasing that makes sense to us in the Army Corps of Engineers. And part of it is Market Street Bridge and the reality of now us needing to fund the design and replacement of that bridge eventually. And we already have some good conversations with the city and with the county and with our federal officials on some of those funding streams that can help make that possible. And in terms of timeline, we hope you will see demolition of the Basque Gate Dam in early 2023 is probably the best I can do. But that will be a really important moment for safety and for the water quality within the Codorus. And then it sets a platform for us to do other phases. And then finally, we continue to look at solutions to maintenance and operations for after this is built. So we've spent a lot of time raising money, a lot of time in design, a lot of time in permitting. We know when we create this, we don't want it to be a burden on the city of York. So we're exploring an endowment and some other tactics for funding, including workforce development initiatives that would provide jobs to local residents to help maintain the structure. And we are also thinking of bidding on Aaron's package and having him spend a day out here pulling some weeds. So with that, I'll take any questions that you have. Aaron.
So besides me going out and pulling weeds, can you speak to the maintenance aspect of this project? Specifically, what is the resilience of this asset's features to the flooding that will happen? Who maintains all that green space now? How do we deal with all the large limbs and trees that get thrown up on the bridge? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's a
repeat the question.
Oh, thank you, Aaron. Yep. What Aaron asked is, who does the maintenance on this project long-term and what's its resiliency? It's in a floodway, so obviously it's going to flood. So all the hardscaping that you're seeing designed is obviously designed to withstand a flood. All the greenscaping that you're seeing is being chosen because it's low maintenance, not no maintenance, but it's not fescue. It's not something that you have to mow regularly. It starts to get into the, pun intended, weeds a little bit, but on, let me see if I can find a good image. So on a image like this, right now, the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't have access to this stretch of the levee system at all. And the way that they would prefer to maintain it is with mowers and, not do handheld tools. So we are building in new access points that are tough to see. But, the areas where the Army Corps can get down and do some of that mowing that they currently can't do and rely on volunteers to help achieve. I think there'll always be a role for volunteers to some extent, particularly when it comes to the riparian areas, because anybody that's worked with, riparian areas, native plants, native grasses, there's an education that happens there about what's good, what's bad, how do you maintain it, when do you maintain it. The good thing is there's only about once a season when that would ever be mowed, but then you need people to go in and maintain it in the meantime. We would really love to see, and we're not there yet, a partnership very similar to our downtown cleanup crew, where we've partnered with Crispus Addicts Association, and they do job training to assist people in the community to help clean our downtown. You could create a very similar model for the Codorus that's privately funded, which our cleanup crew is, which we think this could be, and have people gain job experience going out and doing landscaping tasks, fixing masonry, managing crews, maybe even doing historic interpretation, environmental interpretation, programming. That's where I think there's, a job skill training workforce component that could help with the maintenance as well. Yes, sir.
Isn't Market Street a state route?
It is a state route and it is a state bridge, and it is yet still the only bridge across the Codorus that the city is responsible for maintaining and fixing as it deteriorates. Every other bridge, none of them are, even though PennDOT owns them and operates them, College Avenue is a good example. The County of York's responsible for that one. County of York is responsible for Philadelphia Street. Just happens that Market Street is City of York Street. And that goes back to several decades ago with street improvements that were made all along Market Street. And if you think of the unit block where all of the, where Holy Hound is, and, approaching the square and what's the fancy word for those things that go back and forth? Curves. There was a trade-off at the time that said PennDOT didn't agree with doing those things, but if the city would take on the maintenance and ownership of it, they would allow it to happen. And now, several decades later, sort of kicking ourselves on that one, that now we are responsible for a $8 million bridge replacement. The good news for people that drive in the city of York is it is not so dire that, you're going to see weight restrictions on this tomorrow. but it's coming in the next few years. So that's why we're working with the city and the county to come up with a plan. Yes, sir. Oh. Yeah, so everything you're seeing, let me go back to a couple of the renderings here. He asked, thank you, Aaron. He asked, is there a bike path component in terms of access? So what you're seeing along here is designed to be a PennDOT with bicycle path, mixed use path, multi-use path. So that would continue the whole way from Grantley down to Foundry Plaza and then eventually down. So it would be multimodal. That's a big piece of this. I can't say that some of the, it still remains to be seen what the dimensions of like these access points end up being. They may not be bicycle, they might be pedestrian only. But in general, we're trying to build stuff that works for pedestrians and cyclists. Michael.
Rotary saying that one of the goals of the creek was to speed up the flow of the water, to kind of cool it down and make it a little cleaner. They're going to be developers having.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And it probably was me, because that is one of our major goals. So right now, Baskill Gate Dam is doing what it was intended to do, which is build up water behind it, slack water that moves very slowly, heats up in the process, but then you can paddle on it, for a very limited piece there at Foundry Plaza. By removing that, restoring the natural flow, you speed up the water. It's more oxygenated, which is better for the, life that's living in the creek and life that might want to come back to the creek, and just the water quality overall. And then when you try to find it, okay, so here's a good example. Right now, this whole section is just flat water along Logos Academy and up past the food bank. And it, if we had our engineer here, he could give you the exact rate at which water moves through. But what we'll be installing along the way are what we call ripples. So there is an elevation change, and it's designed in such a way that it forces the water sort of into itself. That's how it gets reoxygenated. That's how it speeds up. Just by tightening this corridor and creating this low flow channel, you're speeding up the water already. So there's a couple of things we're doing to try to speed it up. We don't know, maybe our engineers would make a claim about it, but we don't know what kind of implications that has for fishing and other aquatic life coming back. But that's sort of the best practices. Get rid of the dams, have it be free flowing, oxygenate the water, and have it move more quickly. Yes, sir.
You talk about infrastructure for safe walking ways for city residents.
Mm-hmm.
Is the city of York on board for the long-term policing presence that we needed to make sure that those walkways are safe?
That's part of the conversation, yes. And we have tried to do some things upfront to minimize what that looks like. One of the things is called SEPTED, which is a police analysis of a public works project from the perspective of public safety. And so there probably were early images here and designs where inadvertently our landscape architects were creating sort of hidden spaces where, there might be eventually vegetation that you couldn't see from the street down to a section of the trail. And that's why, for better or worse, this isn't beautiful in the sense of, there's trees along all the entire trail and everything. And part of that is sight lines. We want to keep sight lines open where it crosses underneath bridges, taking efforts there to not repeat some of the issues that have been under some of the other bridges. So there's some lessons learned we're trying to apply. We also think that, going back to that workforce development concept, that there could be a intermediary layer that's not law enforcement, but is just eyes on the trail, stewards of the trail, stewards of the Greenway, that are a presence, but not a law enforcement presence. Because what we've seen on a lot of public trails statewide is the more eyes, the less crime. It doesn't mean there won't be any crime. And then we've also talked, as various iterations of a public camera, safety camera program for the city have, come. everybody talking about them. We've talked about along here what that would look like as well to monitor with public safety cameras too. But like any trail, it's sort of the same tactics as we'd be exploring. Yes.
The question from Carol Wagman: do you have tables or benches along the green spaces at all?
Yes. So in some of our grants that we have, it does include amenities for trail users and creek users. I would also say that that's probably one of the areas where we see it as the fun partnerships we can have with the community after we build the infrastructure out, helping us to design and create parks or park benches, picnic tables. I know in presenting this to WellSpan last week, they suggested, some exercise and fitness equipment like you would see along some of the fitness trails. So I think there's a lot that we can do to add amenities over time. But candidly, although it's in some of our grants to do that, our focus has been the hard infrastructure at this point. Another good example of that is we've had a lot of conversations with Kelly Gibson about public art along this path, and the fact that we're creating a lot of walls that would be great for murals, but also a lot of opportunities to engage the public with public art, with historic interpretation, with environmental interpretation. So those are all things that get really exciting when you start talking about them, but cracking the nut on actually getting the project underway has been our focus.
Parallel track with developing some of the neighborhoods along the shores, so you have this very beautiful visual presence of some of the neighborhoods that are deteriorating. Will there parallel track of economic development along the neighborhood? And they talk about the retail space closer to the Market Street and the commercial district. And if so, if there's a parallel track, what's the, I guess, the plan also for the neighborhood and the residents of those areas? Mm-hmm.
So I would say there is a parallel track emerging. The focus of York College's Urban Collaborative has come to really hone in on the Penn Street corridor, which is the main corridor that really parallels a lot of this, obviously. And the focus there is on developing programs to provide for home improvements, help encourage home ownership, look at what options that are there for retail. There are retailers there already, so stabilizing those. I think one of the exciting pieces is what Four Squares is doing and trying to scale up as well. Fred Walker and Anthony Moore, in trying to encourage home ownership in that neighborhood versus renting, because what we've seen in other communities is you create a really nice park space or a really nice community asset, and then people want to live near it. So the goal would be that through home ownership programs, through some of the investments that maybe the urban collaborative can bring together, you're not displacing people, you're increasing the value of property that they have or increasing patronage for the businesses that they own. So that's definitely in our mind, and something that I think is probably going to best be achieved in partnership with Urban Collaborative and Fred and Anthony and others in the community. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Silas, for this update on the Codorus project. And as some of you may know, this project hits very close to me because this is right outside of my front door, quite literally. So I and the club appreciate your dedication to our city, and we look forward to this amazing project unfold. Thank you again, Silas. Thanks. Yep. In honor of Silas's program today, he has signed the book plate not once, but twice for On the Trail, A History of American Hiking by, what a coincidence, Dr. Silas Chamberlin. I assure you this is not a shameless self-promotion, but this will be donated to the York Academy Regional Charter School. Thank you again, Silas. Thank you. Next week, now this is exciting. Everyone needs a hobby heading into retirement, and our presenter dug in, going back to college to earn a bachelor's degree in archaeology and a master's focused on ancient Greece. Our speaker will be Joe Wagman, former Rotarian and chairman of Wagman Construction. Joe has titled his talk In Search of Achilles, starting with an art history class in college in his early 20s and a couple of DIG participations during his college years. Joe developed an active interest in archaeology. Each summer in recent non-COVID years, he has spent 2 to 3 weeks in digs in Greece. Joe will discuss the results from his most recent dig, which took place in Greece in June of 2022. Come hear Joe's fascinating journey of transitions towards his retirement and following your passions as time becomes more of your own. And in our closing quote, what will Rotary be in 100 years? Well, we know, don't we? No one can imagine. There is nothing impossible to Rotary now by our own Paul Harris in 1945. With that, Rotarians, our meeting is adjourned.